Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Power Hour. Super excited for today. Grant, so good to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing excellent, Tim. It's really good to see you as well. I'm excited to be here once again for these awesome topics for the Power Hour.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny. We were talking a little bit offline right before this, and literally as I walked up the stairs to come up to my bonus room where all my gear is, my wife stopped me and said, "Someone took a crowbar to our mailbox last night and stole all of our mail." So we figured out you're supposed to call the police when it happens. So that's what's been going on
Oh,
in
nice.
my life. It's been
Nice,
crazy,
nice.
but I'm
Disruption
excited
after
to be here.
disruption. Yeah,
I
urgent and
know.
completes are important, and talking about them and discussing them, we all deal with them, but we don't prioritize them. And I'm excited to talk about it because I think they're a huge cog in this business wheel that we put together, and maybe are something that deserve a little bit more of our attention.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is going to be an awesome conversation. And for those of you that are watching live, feel free to start filling up the chat with comments and questions about this. Urgent completes are a major issue, Grant. Every time we go into a business, this is just a big topic that's discussed and can be really hard to figure out what the answer is for it because it can hit you from so many different angles. To start this out though, just as a recap, the reason that we do these power hours is truly to pour out. As we talked about this, Grant, even the name Power Hour is intentional. That power is found in pouring ourselves out. As we pour ourselves out for our customers, our team members, our families, our loved ones, that's where true power is, and that's where true growth is, and hopefully that is something that fosters here, and as a community together, we can learn what it actually takes to succeed. So yeah, man, just super excited to be back in the midst of all the craziness of things going on. I think it's going to be just a really fruitful conversation.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, talking about things like urgent and completes, talking about how they solve our problems permanently just gets me excited. It's almost, to be honest, Tim, it's almost a break from all
Yeah.
the craziness that's going on right now, whether in the world or in our businesses, both good and
Mhm.
bad. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, I'm really excited to get into this.
Yeah, 100%. Well, okay, let's start out with the giveaway. So I'm springing this on you, Grant, because normally we talk ahead of time about what color Yeti we're going to give away. Okay, this
I
week
don't know.
again, we are
Okay.
giving out, I'm going to say 5 copies of the Fire Time Journal. If you do not have this yet, I'm telling you, you need it. It's a roadmap for your company. It's laid out based on the 8 different departments of a retail business: installation, sales, leadership, with resources like links to podcasts and checklists. And I mean, it's an awesome resource. And Grant, you were at my house actually about 2 weeks ago, and you autographed some of these. So we are going to send you guys an autographed copy of the Fire Time Journal. I'm going to put you on the spot. What's it take to win it?
I think that they should identify what they believe an urgent incomplete is before we maybe define it to them in the
Okay.
comments.
Okay. In the comments, you define what an urgent incomplete is. We will ship 5 of these. Actually, Grant will ship 5 of these more correctly. And so
Yes.
we'll DM you afterwards and connect with you. Okay. So as we get started with this, and people can kind of voice in, I'm going to tell a story about this topic, and that'll be our kickoff point. So, Grant, this is probably, I'm going to say, 4 years ago or so. At the time, I live in Portland, Oregon. I was managing showrooms in both Portland and Seattle, and so every other week I would commute back and forth. It's about a 3-hour drive, and usually I would make that drive very late at night or like the mid morning when there was no traffic. And I just left Seattle. It was about, I don't know, 12 o'clock or so. I'm driving home, just cruising down the highway. And I was super frustrated. I was really angry because I felt like my team just didn't get it. And we had a situation where we'd gone out to a job, we did not complete the job, and it got swept under the rug. The customer called back 5 days later, was furious because they hadn't heard anything, and the job got left incomplete. And it was like a big game of point the finger because everybody thought everybody else was taking care of it, and no one was. And this is something, like, it didn't happen all the time, but it happened enough that I'd had it. I was done with it, and I'm like, what is it going to take? I called you and I was just railing on my team. I was so frustrated about it. And you just very calmly said, well, don't you address these in your urgent and complete meetings? And I was like, what's an urgent and complete meeting? And you're like, wait, you have those, don't you? And I'm like, what is an urgent and complete? And the answer you gave me was a major turning point in just how I was able to process and deal with problem jobs. So I'm kind of letting the cat out of the bag with the answer to what is an urgent and complete. But Grant, maybe you can take it from there and talk about what an urgent and complete is, and you can just kind of go through what we discussed on that phone call.
Yeah. And honestly, I want anybody's answer. If you have a different idea and you want to expound more on your idea of what an urgent and complete is, we want to hear that. So please do leave that in the comments. Before I explain what urgent and complete is, which is pretty self-explanatory, I think, the journey and it's funny when you say that story back because it seems so matter of fact and I don't necessarily remember it that way, but at the same time, it becomes once you've done something over and over and over again, we all kind of tend to think we all do these things. And you've done the same thing to me and matter of factly asking me something that I had no idea about. In my journey of trying to run this business, you end up being responsible for all the mistakes. And we all have the problem customers. We all have the customers we determine are a little bit loony or crazy. Every company, I guarantee it, has some names on the board of some crazy customers in their past. When I started taking on the responsibility of these mistakes, these problems, I started to find that there was some consistency to them. First of all, a lot of times the customer was not crazy.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal to me. What made them crazy was even more profound to me. The number one problem I felt I had in trying to minimize our mistakes and allow them to get as bad as they were was just figuring out how to complete jobs as much as we possibly can and then going on an all-out assault when we don't. So an urgent and complete to me, Tim, is just whenever we basically intend to finish the job that day and we do not. If we do not, that is an urgent incomplete. The reason it's urgent is because the consumer deserves our urgency. It's like Christmas to them. They're spending an arm and a leg. They're putting an art piece and a heating piece in the middle of their living room. They've talked to everybody about it. And just like any big purchase, you just can't wait to use it for the first time. And what we do is we just treat it like, well, we'll get back to you later. When we don't finish and do what we promised, then we're almost aloof because we don't have a plan.
Yeah.
And it was devastating, Tim, to go through this experience time after time and realize it really was us avoiding, procrastinating, not being fully intentional in getting those whatever obstacles we encountered solved right away. And it's what's required. And if you manage it in a way like all out assault to finish that job, it all of a sudden changes your mentality in leaving them incomplete and really helps. And all of a sudden you have less of those issues.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, we've seen this so often, Grant. I mean, I'm thinking about a time that we were at a business that had brought us in. You were in the middle of going through some work with one of the business owners, and there was a phone call. And the situation was, we thought, it was something about like, we thought it was a vertical run, but it's horizontal. It was like a venting issue that, and literally, and it was like, what do we do? How do we overcome this? And it's so hard because I think as a business, and especially a business leader and manager, you've got so many things going on. It's so easy to just reactively just take these punches left and right. And when that's the mentality, you never get ahead of it. And frankly, that's what I was doing that day that I called you, is I was just reacting to this saying, why does this happen? What do we do? And you were saying, no, like, you can actually have a rhythm of going out and taking control of these situations. And it's powerful. Another thing you said, like, this just triggered it for me. So about 2 weeks ago, I was in Las Vegas for the NCSG Chimney Sweep convention. And I'm telling you, dude, like, this convention was amazing. Like, you've got to go to it next year. It's incredible.
I will.
Yeah. I mean, I I mean, it was incredible. There's such an environment of togetherness, and we're in it for each other. It was amazing. All that to say, I was watching a sales course that Ryan Hall from Winston's was presenting, and truly, this is probably the best sales course I have been in the last 4 years. It blew my mind.
Wow.
And one thing he said, he's a chimney sweep, high volume, jobs and work. And he said, when I show up to a job site, I can't just knock on the door and say, "Hi, this is Ryan from Winston's. I'm here to clean your chimney. I was looking outside. I think it's that one over there. Do you mind if I get set up?" He goes, "No. These people took 4 hours off of work. That's a full day. They're paying a lot of money for me to come out. When I knock on that door, it's chimney day. And I knock on that door and I say, 'Hey, guess what, Mrs. Smith? It's chimney day. My name's Ryan, and I get to do this every single day. It's the best day of the year.'" Now, I guess that phrase chimney day came from somebody else, which is great, but Ryan was saying he uses it. But dude, like when we show up at a house, it's fireplace day. And you know what? They're
Yes,
dropping
I love
$7
that.
grand. This is the best day of the year. We get desensitized and think, "Oh yeah, it's just a valve that went out. Like, what's the big deal? We'll get it figured out." But to your point,
Totally.
it's like Christmas. It's fireplace day. And we forget this is a huge deal. Like, imagine you drop 10 grand on something, you're pumped for it, you take the whole day off work,
Yeah.
and there's something wrong, and you have to take another day off of work. It's a bad
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the customer's experience is their experience. You can justify the things that go on, but you can't change their experience. And if they have high hopes and you handle the incompleteness aloofly, man, you know what happens in those situations? They start to nitpick. And all of a sudden, it's not the one problem of being incomplete. All of a sudden, you have 4 or 5 things that you're trying to deal with because they become frustrated. And I really believe you have to react as if it's your experience. If we get
Yes.
the opportunity, when it's an urgent and complete, we got to be just as dramatic and just
Oh
as
yeah.
disappointed as the customer. You give them 2 avenues. If you're aloof, they're going to be dramatic and disappointed and give it
Yep.
to you. If
Yep.
you are, if you take what they say, listen to them, understand how hard it is for them to accept that this is the case, and tell them that you're going to do everything to get it rectified and that it's not okay, they'll take the other side of
Yeah.
saying, you know what, it is okay, and we'll get this done when we need to. It's all about
Yeah.
that initial reaction, and that starts well before the problem actually happens. It has to be a mentality built in. The urgent and complete report puts a focus on that, so when something does happen, these urgent and complete, I guess, rules kind of kick in everybody's
Yes.
mind, whether it's the installers or whatnot, on, okay, we've got a situation here, whether it's we are missing chimney, we don't have enough chimney, it's the wrong part in the box, we picked up the wrong part,
It
the
didn't get
unit's not
converted.
working, it didn't get converted, all the problems we run into. The rule number 1, when it kicks in, if it's embedded in them, is contact your leader, notify of the problem, look for solutions as early as possible, and exhaust all opportunities to finish it, whether it's come back to the office, send a runner, rob a part, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
At that point, customer doesn't even really know there's an issue. You are trying to solve that issue so that the day just goes according. If it then is determined that you cannot finish the job, it's super important that you make the plan prior to leaving and give
Yeah.
the customer the plan and a scheduled date to come back out. And you will get
Yeah.
a completely different experience on the backside, and very rarely be dealing with, that super disappointed customer that ends up wanting to nitpick every little thing you did incorrectly.
Yeah, I so agree. And I love that, Jillian says that they're a fun bunch, and you guys totally are. Like, I couldn't believe that show is just amazing. This idea of urgent and complete, because we react to it, we are not able to take control of the narrative. I was actually on a run last night, Grant. I was thinking about this. I was thinking about it in terms of sales, but it's actually true with installation as well. Is that installation and sales are like a dance, and we lead the dance. No, the customer is the partner, and there's some say that they have, but it's up to us to be the leader. And if we do not dictate how this will go and what will happen, the customer will, and that's
Yep.
never good. So you are the leader of the dance. And if you are not proactive in stepping here and stepping there and turning this way and turning that way, it just won't work. So let's jump into this real fast. So we all know what an urgent incomplete is, right? It's missing a remote control. Even there's a warranty issue on the stove, even if it's not your fault, like that's an urgent incomplete, right?
Yep.
So
100%.
anything happens on this job when you were planning to finish it that day that prohibits you from finishing it, it's an urgent and complete. Grant, can you talk about the process of how you have these weekly meetings and what you do? Because this was huge for me, 4 or 5 years ago when I heard it. It totally transformed the way that we approach retail.
Yeah. I mean, so on service and install side, we'll track urgent incompletes basically. And we've talked about this before, but what we have is basically a KPI or metric tracker scoreboard that we review on a weekly basis through our team meetings. So installation meeting, service meeting. The metric is set up so it's acceptable to have outstanding 2 urgent incompletes. If we have more than 2, it goes into the red category. If we have 1, it's in the yellow category. And if we have 0, it's in the green category. To be very honest with you, we're in the yellow and the red quite a bit because nothing's perfect. It's how you manage your mistakes. It's how you manage these problems. So what's really cool about it is we have a saying here that you're either winning or you're learning. You're not losing if you're in the red. So let's say we have 4 urgent incomplete jobs on the installation side. We are constantly managing those urgent incompletes, and we're managing them to completion. So we have the scoreboard, the metric indicator telling us where we're at. The next page on that scoreboard would actually have the details of what's happened, what the status is, and what the plan is. Most of the time, by that time, it should have all those things in place, and we're just reviewing. Are we on the same page? Are we doing good? Sometimes, if it's happened last minute, if a ball's got dropped, that's our time to clean it up and make sure that, okay, we have addressed this. We've kind of dropped the ball here. Where are we at with that? This person's on vacation. Let's get back on that. And it's just constantly managing. And we have a goal. We have a goal to not have an urgent incomplete longer than 1 week. Now, sometimes due to waiting on a part from a manufacturer, it does end up being there longer than 2 weeks. But what's awesome, Tim, is we know it's there. We know it's not okay that the customer has to wait this long. And maybe we call them and we say, you know what, when we come out there for the return trip, since you're waiting, we have 2 Yeti 10-ounce ramblers that we're going to bring out and gift to you for the inconvenience. It's just a constant attention on a weekly basis to these things. And they end up being 2-3 things at a time where when we're not managing, Tim, it's 10, 15, and it just is overwhelming to even, and we just end up putting out the fire. We don't end up solving the problem, finding the cause of the fire, which doing it on a weekly consistent basis, minimizing the amount of times it happens, allows you to then prevent it from happening in the future.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this a lot. Diving catches create more diving catches. And many of us as leaders know everything, right? I mean, quote unquote, know everything.
Yeah,
So there's a
right.
problem on a job. Okay, wait a minute. I can go do this. I'll stop what I'm doing. I'll go, do this sort of thing. And we should act with urgency. But when we don't sit back and look at why are these happening, it will only create more diving catches. If your team
100%.
learns that you are always the backstop for everything, they will perform to that expectation, period. And it's not because they're lazy, or it's just because that's human nature, right? So what I love about what you talked to me about is like the process has to start with the installs. So when the installers go out to a job, and again, this is true if you're a chimney technician, a retail installer, it doesn't matter. When an installer or a technician is on a job, there are 3 situations that can happen at the end of that job. The job can be complete, meaning it is 100% complete to the scope of work. You leave and you would never need to come back for any reason. Situation number 2, it's a planned incomplete, meaning it's a 2-trip job. And this is the first trip of the job. Or in a new construction home, we installed the fireplace and we got to wait 6 months until the house gets finished to go put the decorative front on and fire the unit off. Okay.
Yep.
So we have a complete, we have a planned incomplete, or we have number 3, an urgent and complete. Those are the only 3 options. There's only 3. And at the end of every single installation trip, the installers have to document which one of those 3 it is on their paperwork.
Yeah.
So there's not,
Yep.
and this implies you have to have installation paperwork. You got to document it. And if it is an urgent and complete, like you said, a call must be placed to their leader in the company to make a plan. And that plan's got to be communicated to the customer ahead of time.
Yep.
Can you talk about, yeah, go for it.
Well, I was just going to say it has to be communicated in kind of a multitude of ways too, Tim. Customers don't want to wait for your paperwork to get processed and to be followed up on. Like, they want to be attended to immediately. So on the installation checklist paperwork, we put planned and complete, urgent and complete, and completed. But we also have a quality control check that involves everybody right away. So every installation team is required to send an email to picks at Falco Spokane, which include the sales team, the coordinators, and the necessary people that need to see these pictures and be informed of how the job went. So they have certain pictures that they take. A lot of people do that, and that is wise to do, before, after, and during pictures specific of every installation. But what's really awesome about what our support staff and installation team have worked on is we put salesperson name, customer name, job number, date installed, and at the very end, planned incomplete, unplanned incomplete, or completed. So that way the salesperson, who's the liaison, the coordinator, the estimator, and everybody involved know that job's complete or not. And we can either, if it's incomplete, we haven't heard about it, we should know about it, get information for it. And if it's complete, feel good that the day went well. That email alone has put us in a position to be almost immediate. Salespeople will call the customer after they're informed and verify that everything's okay and that there's a plan in place. And if there's not, we'll make sure that there is within a very quick amount of time.
Yeah, it's really, really powerful. I just want to acknowledge Dave's comment. So Dave's definition here: an urgent and complete is an unanticipated, insurmountable problem that keeps a job from being marked complete. I love insurmountable, because if we could get past it, it would not be an urgent and complete. It is insurmountable. Dave, you've got a copy of the Firetime Journal coming to you. Shoot me an email. My email is tim@itsfiretime.com with your address, and we'll get that out to you. For anybody that is watching this, I would love to know, what causes the most urgent incompletes for you? Is it not enough vent pipe? Is it that there was a misunderstanding of the scope of work? Is it there was a warranty problem? What is it that causes the most? You know, Grant, to your point, I think that this instant notification is really powerful, because again, most customers are really pretty reasonable people. I don't have a lot of patience when folks say that they can't stand their customers, because at the end of the day, like, I mean, there's a small percentage of customers that are terrible, but most of them are not. And if you put them in a situation where they've spent thousands of dollars, you made a mistake, you didn't communicate it, and you left their house without a plan, I mean, I think 1 + 1 = 2. It makes sense that customer is really, really upset. But if we can get out ahead of this thing, make a plan with the customer, and follow through on that, it drastically reduces the amount of pain that there's going to be on this. And I guess when you talk, Grant, about how the email gets sent in, now we can start to document. So now we can start to see, how many urgent incompletes do we have this week? Who's on the list? What's the reason for it? And now that we can get ahead of it that way, we don't have to always make diving catches, because we can see, you know what? It seems like every single time we do a wood insert with an insulated chimney, something happens where we run into a problem. Right?
Oh yeah.
But without tracking that every time, it's just us reacting, being punched in the face, and we're just making diving catch after diving catch.
Yep. I can't even tell you how many meetings we've looked at each other and said we would have never known that unless we did it this way. And it reveals things that you would never know were important. I totally agree with you in emphasizing how important that is in that situation, for sure.
Yeah, maybe we could talk about the meetings, Grant, and I can share what we did based on the feedback that you gave me. But so you get together once a week, right? So stuff comes in real time, And the goal obviously is that it gets taken care of before even making it to the meeting. But
Yeah.
at some point each week you've got a meeting. What is your urgent and complete kind of dashboard or scoreboard look like?
I think that basically in regards to like a dashboard, I don't think it's anything that's
Or your
difficult
list,
or
right? Your list.
complicated. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that we know how many urgent and completes we have each and every week. We manage those urgent and completes on a weekly basis. That really is the extent of it. And what we've been forced to do through knowing that on a weekly basis, we're going to be held accountable to the standard. There's tons of work going on before the meeting, after the meeting, in solving those problems. We have one of our pillars as delivering wow to the consumer, because that's what they need. That's what they expect. And so we'll pull out our stops to make sure that any of them are completed as soon as possible, and hopefully that day. The thing that I think you're maybe getting to on the dashboard is, as far as, finding the issues that continue to happen. Repeated mistakes are not okay. Mistakes are totally fine. And scheduling a time unemotionally to go through and constructively look at these things that are going wrong, seeing that they're happening time and time again, and having the time to actually put things in place to solve those is a huge power within your business. And it's almost impossible to understand until you do it. But there's certain things that happen that now we as a company have put in place to prevent those problems from continuing to happen. And the more you do that, the more streamlined you get, the more freedom you have, the more control of the situation, the happier your employees are and customers are, for sure. Tim, one of the things that I wanted to bring up as you were talking about what is kind of a plug for the 10-step execution and how important it is in having the proper pieces understand their roles. If people haven't heard us talk about the 10-step execution process, we believe there's kind of an over view of a framework for how a hearth retailer can operate successfully by passing the baton one after another. Basically starts in the showroom. You investigate the customer, you find their problem, you find product that solves that problem, you find cost to it, you set them up on a path, you pass the baton to the estimator, etc. There's a process, estimator back to sales, then it gets confirmed and greenlit, and it goes to scheduling, then to purchasing, then it goes to staging, installation, paperwork, and thank yous. And there's a really good stepping process to that. An urgent and complete, in order to be properly managed, once it's complete, it's got to go back to the follow-up process. And there's certain pieces in place where it follows just the same trajectory. You don't have to have a 10-step execution process. But who is responsible for the urgent and completes has to be identified in your company. Yeah. And when we're in companies, it's like people are looking at each other like, well, who wants to take it this time? Nope. It's got to be someone every time, whether it's the sales staff who are the liaisons to the customer and responsible for the job from start to finish, whether it's the sales manager or leader that's responsible, or the estimator that's responsible. There has to be a person that is accountable and responsible for making those things, those urgent and completes complete. I find that a lot of time just having the piece of that figured out isn't. Therefore, everybody's looking around like, who's going to do it this time?
100%, and you mentioned the 10-step execution process. If you go back, I think it was either 2 or 3 power hours back on YouTube, you can find us going through that in about an hour or so. Yeah. We overview those 10 steps. I think that what you said about assigning a person is really powerful. So after your conversation with me, we put together a really simple spreadsheet, and it basically had like 4 columns on it, right? Customer name, the unit, the problem, who was responsible to solve it, and when it would get done. It's 5 categories, but really easy.
I love it. Yeah.
And I'm telling you, man, at the beginning, we had a lot of these because in general, like if you're not paying attention to it, I bet most companies have, 10 to 20 that are going on at any given time. Like we just can't get that one complete. It's just hanging out there. Once you put it on that board, it's kind of scary, but you actually diagnose the problem, like the real problem, right? Installers did not bring out specified pieces of pipe. You just own that. That's the problem. We made a mistake, right?
Yep.
The estimator misjudged how many hours this would take and the team ran out of time. Like whatever it is, like you document the problem and then you assign someone to take responsibility for it. And what we would do is we would say, if you are in charge of an urgent incomplete, it doesn't matter what your position in the company is, you have the authority to tell anybody what to do because you got to get this thing completed.
Yeah, I love it. I think an all hands on deck type of mentality. We do everything, an all out assault to make sure completion is a top priority, minimizes the incompletes, and then manages the incompletes when they arise, for sure. I
Yeah.
absolutely love it.
Yeah. I mean, these meetings for us, we found, our first couple meetings honestly took like an hour and a half to 2 hours because there was so much stuff on the list that we
Yeah.
just had not paid attention to. We started actually documenting our jobs and looking at it, and it was bad. And over
Yeah.
time, that list started to get better and better and better. Grant, I'm thinking about our friend Patrick Ryan out in Pennsylvania. I was talking to him the other day, and this is something that for almost a year now, they've been really diligent on. They call them UIs. I'm like, dude, that's a great acronym. That's better than,
Yeah.
the urgent and complete. But he's like, yeah, we have our UI meeting. And it's just a part of their scoreboard where every week they're looking at the UIs. Like, who was it? Where was
I
the
love hearing
problem?
that.
When's it going to get resolved? And it's so cool to see that because these things still come up. Like, just because you have an urgent and complete meeting doesn't mean that frankly, for us, like we were doing enough installs. There were not that many, weeks on top of each other where we had zero. Like, when you're doing a lot of volume, stuff just happens, whether it's a warranty issue or whatever. But what this did is it made it to where nothing slipped through the cracks. It was always in front of us. We could go on offense, calling the customer, talking with them, reassuring them, and solving the problem, and then looking at the trends. Just like I said before, it's like, man, why is it that every wood insert with an insulated liner seems to be an urgent and complete? Now we can get to the root cause and we can solve that problem permanently, to use your language.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And I love hearing that about Patrick. And I love the acronym UIs. It sounds good. I love it. Might try to take that. I think that you know, how do we deal with urgent incompletes? I think it's being intentional and prioritizing. And honestly, even if you don't have a way to track it, just starting a list of the urgent incompletes you know about, just starting a meeting on a weekly basis to discuss those will improve everything that you're doing on that side. Just meeting about it. I can't tell you how times in our system now of a redundant meeting every week, even still to this day, we'll have an urgent and complete review, and there will be an installer that says, what about Dennis Olson? We don't have Dennis Olson, and we will have missed it. And you know what? If we didn't meet about it, we didn't discuss it on a weekly basis, they didn't understand the importance of it, we would miss it. And even if when we're doing that, we miss it, how many times do we miss it when we're not tracking or meeting about it? And even if you miss one, that's okay. It doesn't mean the meetings aren't worth it. You're doing everything you can every week to make sure that you're doing what you need to for your consumers.
Well, we were talking about this just the other day that, like, I would say if your company doesn't actively track urgent incompletes, I guess I'll go on a little bit of a rabbit trail for a second. One of the keystone metrics that we talk about, Grant, we're going to be going over this in the Fire Time workshop coming up next week, is a metric that's called installation completion percentage, right? So if your installers are going out to, 10 jobs this week, and every single one is you're planning on completing it that day, how many of those actually get completed versus urgent incompletes, right? So if you set out to do 10, and you've got 8 that you completed, and there was 2 that you weren't able to complete, you have 80% installation completion percentage. And I would say if your company right now does not track urgent incompletes and meet weekly to go around them, I will bet you that you are around 50% for your installation completion percentage. That's my guess. Because there's always that little thing.
And we almost become okay with it. We almost become okay with it because it's just a part of, it's not what the consumer expects, but it's kind of, we'll get there next Thursday, type of mentality.
Or, we'll have the owner run it out on her way home from work.
You can improve your completion percentage without focusing wholeheartedly on urgent incompletes, truthfully, because that intentionality of how do we solve these as fast as possible leads to preventative measures that you take to not get there. And the more you meet about it, the more you talk about it, the more information you get to make preventative decisions to not get there, and your completion percentage increases. One note I would say is on incompletes, if it's a planned incomplete and everything expected to be done that day is expected, we would count that as a completed install.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
In those numbers. The urgent incompletes, the unplanned incompletes, are the ones that we would document and understand as being, on that side of it.
Yeah, that's a great call, because if it's completed to the scope of work, then it's complete.
Yes.
Even if it's, the scope of work on trip 1 says that we are going to run 35 feet of gas line, punch it through the fireplace, put a pressure meter on it, run the vent pipe down, and seal the chimney. That's a completed job. Now, we're not getting our money yet because we still have to go out to put the insert in, connect it to the gas line, connect it to the vent pipe. But we completed the scope of work. That's what we did, even though there's more to the job. I think that's exactly right. Okay, so we have a comment here from Robert. So he said that it's rescheduling time, squeezing in to go back to complete. I mean, that it's such a killer.
It is. I mean, it's so difficult because you have to schedule proactively. You have to fill up your schedule to a certain extent or you're not successful. So how do you prioritize certain spots or certain people to accommodate those incompletes? And I think every business probably does it differently with the time allotted or people allotted. It depends on how you're set up, how you do your schedule. But yeah, you're exactly right. Trying to control that schedule and fit people into an already full schedule with, coordinating with that customer on their schedule and keeping your employees happy. It's a tough mix for sure.
Tough.
And
how do you
that's
do
also, so we are proactive on our scheduling and leave, a Friday or 2. We have 3 or 4 installation crews running, sometimes 4.5 installation crews running majority of the time. And we'll leave 1 to 2 Fridays open for certain jobs, for cleanup, for not all the Fridays open, but a few of them. And then we have a lot of 5 and 6 hour jobs that get scheduled on a regular basis. We have a criteria in which jobs get scheduled, so we control when those jobs are, where they go, and we have good windows for makeup. But more importantly, I have basically a project manager responsible for all the installers and the installations, and they are tasked with making sure urgent incompletes are attended to, and they are incentivized on completion of installation. So ultimately, he's going to be out there doing it or getting his team to do it whenever they can to finish it. And having a full schedule is kind of an advantage if you do it in the right way, where you truly do solve the problems that maybe you wouldn't solve due to the urgency of having a full schedule. I firmly believe in packing the schedule and leaving very little room. It's hard to twist my arm even to leave the Fridays open sometimes, but it is necessary because there's all sorts of things that do happen. Now, what I will say with those Fridays, we don't always move jobs up if everything's went well that week, but a lot of the times we do try to move a job or 2 up, probably 4-hour jobs, still get them out early to try to maximize revenue for that week.
Yeah, you guys have like a pull ahead list, right? Of the good jobs that, absolutely.
Yeah, basically on our pre-staging process, right now we'll have 75 installs on the schedule, and we'll know that 29 of them are completed and ready and maybe on 4 weeks out, but ready to move forward, so that we can try to move some jobs forward and really make sure that week is maximized if the open day comes.
Yeah, that's really good. And it's made me think maybe a future Power Hour we should talk about an installation grading and rating system. So this is something again that you really made me aware of. I was actually in Tennessee about a week ago working with a company on this, and basically what we did is we had all their installers and service techs in the same room, about 9-10 people, and I gave them a sheet of paper, and it had every type of job that you could do. So like, for example, pellet stove, 1-story new construction, pellet stove, 2-story construction, pellet stove, 3-story new construction, pellet stove out the back, new construction, pellet stove out the back, existing home, pellet stove one. I mean, like literally this sheet had like 100, different scenarios on it. And we took about 30 minutes, and the installers had to go through and they had to rank them on 2 criteria. had to give them a ranking of A, B, C, or D based on how much they liked doing those kinds of jobs. And then they had to give them a difficulty ranking on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is the least difficult and 10 is the most difficult. And it was powerful because there was so much common ground. And what was so cool afterwards is I took it, I kind of averaged it out, and I gave it to the business owner. And I basically said, hey, based on this, here are the 10 jobs that your sales team, you need to tell them, do what it takes to sell these jobs. And on these 10 jobs, you need to raise your prices $500 because they don't want to do them. And they say they're extremely difficult,
So
So
awesome.
things like that are so powerful. And going back to being able to proactively schedule urgent incompletes, right? So like if you've got a D-level job that's a 9 out of 10 on the difficulty rating, well, maybe you don't schedule anything else that day because something could happen that would make it go a little
Totally.
bit long.
Yep.
Or, again, you've got those 5 to 6 hour jobs that are A or B level. They're probably going to get done on time. They're jobs the installers like to do. Well, now we can throw a 2-hour, return trip onto something. But again, it's all about evaluated experience. If, every single one of us has dealt with a natural gas stove that never got converted to propane. We've all dealt with it a million times. We've all dealt with, oh man, we needed an extra 4-foot chunk of chimney pipe, right? We've dealt with every single one of those situations. But if we don't evaluate that experience to think about what could have happened, what do we do next? If we just react, we just continue to make diving catch after diving catch, and sometimes we don't even make the catch. But again, same thing with installations. It's like if you were to ask someone, how long does it take to install a pellet stove? Very often people will say, everyone is different. I'm telling you, everyone is not different. 98% of them take the same amount of time. And there's 2% that absolutely fluctuate up and down. And 98%, I don't know where I'm coming up with that number. But the point is that there are trends to this sort of thing. And by evaluating, how long does it take us to install a gas insert? How long does it take us to do a wood stove? Everyone in our crew hates doing 3-story jobs. Why don't we just charge extra $1,500 for 3-story jobs?
Yeah. I mean, it just simple, like we have to keep our employees happy today. You are obligated more than ever to keep your employees happy, not just satisfied, happy. And so like certain things we've been able to do in rating our installer or our jobs, and in turn, figuring out what our installers are capable to do, give us an insight in how to make them happy. So like you take the difficult jobs and you put them in the middle of the week. Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Thursday. The R10s are only on Wednesday. There's no R10s that go on Thursday, Friday. And guess what? All the R5, 6, 7s, those sprinkle out to the Mondays and Fridays. Why? Because Monday, there's a ton of different things that happen. That's the biggest call out day of the week. There's all sorts of obstacles. Leaders are in hard positions because of the start of the week. And on Friday, we want to get out. We want to have fun. We don't want to be stressed on the way out and think over the weekend negatively about work. We want it to be a positive experience. And rating the jobs, the type of jobs, and everybody's a little bit different. Some are heavy construction, some are retail, some are both. And you want to divide those out because they are different. You want their opinion and feedback because it's them telling you this. And it's eye-opening, Tim. It is it's really cool to hear you say it and apply it in different businesses, because it is amazing what you can do with it. And it's not just single use rating for a job. It's for the customer. It's for the support staff. It's for the scheduler. It's everybody has a role in understanding what that is.
Yeah, you're so right. It's powerful. And the cool thing too, just circling back to like urgent completes, is that as your team rallies around this and evaluates the experience together and starts to solve problems together, and again, go the job rating system. When your installers are actually asked, what kind of jobs do you like doing? How tough are they? Like, these things build a team that likes to be together, because as your team comes together to solve problems together, not with just you being the hero every time. As they start to solve problems together, that breeds a mentality where they continue to solve problems. When you as the leader jump on every grenade and you are the gatekeeper of knowledge, I can't tell you how long it takes. Just give the job to me and I'll schedule it. I can't tell you how difficult it is. Let me look at the scope of work and I'll assign the crew to it. I mean, that does not work. Okay, you're at the job site. Okay, you're missing a 4-foot stick of pipe. You know what? Okay, I'll call the customers on my way home and I'll figure. When you do that, like, you are asking for the grenade to blow up in your lap.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be we have to go through the experiences in order to understand the mistakes. And when you constantly are jumping on the grenade or doing the diving catch, you are not allowing that person to experience what they need to get better. You're enabling the problem to continue to happen. And Tim,
Yeah.
we see that time and time again, and we see it with the desperation in the face because that's all they know to do. And truthfully, Tim, in a lot of situations, it's what makes them feel most comfortable because it's what they've been doing for so long, and it's more
Yeah.
uncomfortable to actually take proactive steps to do it. And it's
Yeah.
sad to see that. I mean, really,
Yeah.
truly, the consistency of the urgent and complete report and meetings, I really feel like out of a lot of things that we discuss in these power hours, could be one of the single biggest changes
Yep.
for someone who's running a hearth retail company that's struggling with, the day to day.
I agree. It was for me, Grant, when we had that conversation, it blew my mind. I mean, I never thought about, wait a minute. I don't have to just always get punched in the face. Like, we could have a weekly meeting. We could have our installers, check the box of complete, planned and complete, urgent and complete. And we were far from perfect, just like any company is gonna be.
Oh
But
yeah.
it goes back to the fact that, like, a framework gives freedom. It really does. The constraint of a framework really allows you to have freedom of knowing that we have a way so problems don't get swept under the rug. I know what to do next. Like, it's really powerful. It was for me.
Yeah, yeah. Tim, I want to, before it gets too far into this, I just want to talk about one thing that we have recently started doing, and we've always kind of always used this term, and I kind of want to explain the term and explain
Yeah.
why we use this term and how we utilize it. So, I talked earlier about kind of the rules of a job being incomplete and kind of the stages of as soon as you realize there's an issue, you involve your leader. You exhaust all opportunities of resolution, and then you make a plan if we aren't able to resolve. What we find in a lot of businesses, in my business as well, is that everybody's busy. Everybody has their own jobs that they're trying to do. Sometimes the people that need to be available aren't available right then and there. And so I found myself, as I started to move away from the day-to-day stuff, I started started to say a term that's I say all the time now, called all hands on deck. This requires all hands on deck. And originally, when I was more reactive, it was all hands on deck meeting. So before the day start, I'd have a 10-minute meeting. It'd be an all hands on deck to solve Jan Smith, or it'd be an all hands on deck to solve these two issues that have been nagging at us. We have turned that in proactively into an all hands on deck text message thread. So the installation team, the lead installers, the two estimators who are responsible for all the jobs that they do, the coordinators that coordinate all the jobs that they do, and myself are on this all hands on deck text thread. And it's pretty amazing. At first, it's a little bit like, what do we use this for? How do we use it? But really, it's to make sure that whoever's available can help. And it's amazing synergy to be on a text thread and not have to do anything and see your team in action. See a lead installer saying, hey, I just ran into an issue on this bend on this basement 90, and man, I'm not sure I'm going to get this flex piece to the rigid around that corner. And okay, send us all pictures. Let's get all the minds on it. Let's get everybody's feedback. And ultimately, the leader is communicating the solution, but he might not be available, so I can step in and he can say that, or we can all share the pictures and get that one idea that we weren't thinking of. And it really has been amazing to watch that. So all hands on deck is a term I would highly recommend using because it means something to people. All the important people need to be there. We're only going to meet once and we're going to solve the thing. And then all hands on deck text message allows you to be proactive in that. So you're not calling a meeting the next morning, figuring all that out.
Yeah, it's awesome. You know, Jerry had a great comment. This is referred to as a Kaizen event, coming together to solve a
Yeah.
problem. And it's so true. You know, in my old company, we would do quarterly Kaizen events where we would kind of gather around a series of problems. We get our leaders together to solve it. And truly, like that's the way that you move the needle. Is it? Oh, there you go. There you
That's
go.
a Kaizen race board for my teams right now. There's a race to 25 Kaizens this year. So
Oh
totally
gosh.
understand. And there's major power and constant improvement for sure.
Yeah. You know, because at the end of the day, like we say this a lot, that business is not won through a single, you know, decisive victory. It's a million small victories that the sum
Yeah.
total ends up being a winning business. And again, urgent and completes, it seems like, well, how am I going to find that time? My first meeting is going to be 2 hours because there's 15 of these things. I don't have 2 hours. It's like, well, you got to start somewhere. And if you can commit to it, like little by little by little, that 2 hour meeting will whittle down to probably a 45-minute meeting. And what you're going to find is that urgent and completes are a time suck for everybody, and they
Oh
kill
yeah.
momentum. You know, when a
Oh,
salesperson is dragged back into an urgent and complete, their head is not in a good spot to work with
yep.
customers on the showroom floor, or when your support staff is in the middle of it and they're answering the phones, but they're tired and they're stressed and they're waiting for a call back on this piece. Like, they're a time suck for everybody. And so it's just like those little victories week after week after week. You look back a couple years later and all of a sudden you realize, like, we're not perfect, but we are winning because we're going
Yeah.
after this and taking action.
I couldn't agree more. And the reason to meet on a weekly basis is to not forget that, to not become complacent in where it's still not good enough when it is really good. When you're meeting, you're not just exposing what you're trying to hold accountable and improve on, you're actually saying, thank you. You're doing
Yeah.
an amazing job. Continue this. We want a 95% completion and better. And eventually, Tim, it puts you in a position to incentivize completion for your installers and pay
Yeah.
based on performance versus
Yep.
just the amount of times they work. And there's power there. We have people always asking us, how do we put a compensation plan together? It starts with weekly meetings. It starts
Yeah.
with metrics put up on a scoreboard, understanding and reviewing them on a weekly basis, and eventually the compensation and incentive come along with those things.
Yeah. Grant, I want to end this by going back to something that you talked about at the beginning. And you said that most of the time when you talk to a customer who is upset, you take the side of the customer. And that's actually what I found. You know, when I was managing retail stores a couple of years ago, most often when I would get brought into a situation to de-escalate it, when I would hear my team out, even before I talked to the customer, I could almost always find a number of areas where we had failed. And it was just asking that question back. If this had happened to you, if you didn't get a call and the installers just showed up at your house and you happened to be gone, would you be okay with that, or would you have expected them to call you on the way? I
Yeah.
don't care if they showed up during the window. If you had to go run to the grocery store because, you know, your kid, I don't know, needs like a snack and you don't have one, whatever it is, would you have expected the installers to call? And then if you were at the grocery store for 30 minutes, would you have expected them to let you know before they left to go to the next job site? Like, stuff like this would happen, you know? And whatever it is that causes the issue, in most cases, I would end up siding with the customer. And you know, every once in a while you get a terrible customer, but that is so rare. Most of the time, these are reasonable people where we have not either set the expectation or managed to the expectation. It goes back to that leading dance analogy. If we don't lead the dance, they will, and we may not like where it goes. I think that it's just
Yeah.
really important to understand that. There was a training I was doing about a year and a half ago with a sales team. And after the training was over, one of the salespeople was using some really derogatory language about their customers. And I was just stupefied. And I was like, dude, you can't talk about your customers this way. And this guy said, they don't deserve my customer service. And I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, they pay your bills. Like, they are the reason that you have a job to complain about is because of your customers." And I get that, like, not all of them are maybe the people that you'd want to become friends with, but you have to have a respect for these people or you shouldn't do business with them, because if this is your mentality about customers, you will not go the extra mile. You know, you will not be urgent in the way that you deal with these situations to solve their problem, and it will just perpetuate it. So I think that it's very easy behind the scenes to like make fun of a customer, say, oh gosh, they were just so stupid, they didn't get it, or I can't believe how annoying this person's being. And I just think like we got to squash that language. We got to squash it. That has no place in an urgent and complete meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with everything you've said. When dealing with a customer who's upset and you missed the mark on expectations, you have to remember that their experience is their experience and it's unarguable. Like you
Yep.
can't argue their experience. And what we end up doing when we listen to the people that have taken the phone calls, the people that maybe haven't handled it exactly how they should, and we hear their side, and all of a sudden it's crazy, Miss Jane Smith. Sometimes that builds us up to almost fight fire with fire. And what we
Yep.
do so often is the first thing said that is an accusatory thing that we don't agree with, we argue. And I used to be like that. I mean, I have to admit that I used to get kind of wrapped up in it and like,
Yeah.
no, we're the best. We do this way every time for this reason. But like, if it didn't make them feel a certain way or it made them feel a bad way, you have to address that. Even I'm not saying with one customer you do, but you have to understand it and you have to address it. What I found, Tim, is you listen until they're exhausted of talking, and you pause in those awkward spots, which is really hard for me. I like to fill that space with some type of verbiage. You have to listen until they're done talking. Then you have to acknowledge their experience is not acceptable. And when you do that, they take the higher road. They take the path that gets you where you want to go. But if you take that path, if you don't take it seriously, if you don't acknowledge their experience, be empathetic to it, tell them you know how bad it is, they're going to take that path and they're going to give it to you hard. And I tell you what, man, it's amazing the problems they find out after there's certain expectations not missed and how you address those things. So yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm sorry. I kind of lost.
You're good, man. You're so right in that. And it reminds me honestly of a failure that I had like 3 days ago. So, cause this is something like just like laying my cards on the table. I don't think you ever totally outgrow this. And it's so easy when your ego is tied to it, right? If you own the business, if you're a manager, it's so easy to have your ego tied to it. You fly off the handle. And I'll tell you, this is like, 3 days ago, I got a call from Matt Bradley, who I work with at Wi-Fi, and he was talking about an issue that one of our partners was having, and he's explaining it. And I wasn't fully listening because I thought I knew what the answer was. And I was like, oh gosh, this is user error, Matt. Like, this is what happened. It was this and this. I assumed this is what happened. I've seen it a million times. You just got to explain it this way. And I went off on this like probably like 3 to 4 minute like rant about it. And Matt, to his credit, he stops and he goes, Tim, you need to listen to me. I'm aware of user error, and I'm telling you, you were not in that meeting, and I was. This is not user error. And sometimes you can jump on this like it is, and you need to think about it because I think that there's something going on here. And that made me pause. And I looked at it, and he was right. And the beauty was we were able to go in, fix the problem, and now it's fixed permanently for anybody that ever had that same issue. But again, me left to my own devices, my ego was in there. Oh, I've seen it before. I know that issue. Like I didn't listen, just like you said. So I think it's something that we're always learning. Like, and we need people like Matt that are truth tellers that can say, no, Tim, you need to listen to me.
Yeah, we don't have enough time. We have to solve these problems as soon as possible. Once we've been doing it a long time, we gather the information that we've learned and we come to conclusions faster because of all that information, but we have to make a lot of assumptions. And sometimes we go too fast, too hard, and we're not right, even though all the indicators were pointing to we were. I can relate to that wholeheartedly still to this day, Tim. Seriously.
Yeah.
So.
Oh man, I got a million of them like that. Well, this has been an amazing power hour. So I want to talk about a couple things as we round out here. Grant, next month we're going to meet on May 26th, and I know that we try to meet consistently on the second Thursday of every month. This month I had a crazy travel schedule, so it got pushed back. Next month we both have a crazy travel schedule, so it's going to be at the end of the month, May 26th. Grant, I get in trouble for saying controversial things sometimes. This was you. You pick this topic. Next month, we are going to talk about our industry doesn't need better products. Oh, dude, if you're in the
We're
R&D
just gonna
department
leave
of
it
a
there. I'm
manufacturer
excited.
listening to that,
I am excited. I think it'll be really
great.
good. I mean, there's other focuses, and sometimes we focus on things that I understand are a priority, and obviously the products are. But I think there's some other things that I would like as a retailer for manufacturers or distributors to focus on. We just want to talk about that.
Yeah, I'm excited. As soon as you said that, I said, yes, we have
Yeah,
to
me
do that.
too. I am too.
Yeah. No, we have some travel coming up between now and May 26th to make you guys aware of it, that we're going to be going out to Northeast Distribution's dealer event. And that's going to be, I think it's May 21st through 23rd. Let me just check the calendar real quick. It's May 22nd through 24th. Sorry about that. And it's going to be in New Hampshire. And Grant, we have a 2-day keynote. So we're doing the
Yeah.
keynote on the 10-step execution process, half of it on day 1, half of it on day 2. You're leading a course. What's your course on? It's on developing your install
installation team. Yep.
Yeah.
Installers and installation team. Yeah, really excited about it. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, man. So if you're going to be out there, it's going to be great. For those of you in Atlantic Canada, actually, the week after that, we're going out to New Brunswick, which is like
Yeah.
almost at the edge of the world. And we're
4
going to go
hour
out to
time
Compact.
difference.
It's going to be
Yeah.
amazing. So if
I
you're going
can't
to be on
wait.
the East Coast, we'd love to see you at Northeast Distribution for the keynote. If you're going to be in Atlantic Canada, if you buy from Compact Distribution, try to get to that event because we're going to be diving really, really deep on the 10-step execution process to help you guys. So
Yeah.
this has been awesome, Grant. I'm
Tim,
so
that was a
thankful
blast,
for
man.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
and
you,
for
man. That was
everybody
awesome.
watching, we don't take this lightly. So thank you. We hope it helps you, and we'll see you guys again very soon. All right.